My name is Jean Hakiza or John Hakiza. Hakiza is a brief name for Hakizimana. In Rwanda, people call their kids, they give names according to circumstances in which they were born. So our last names are not family names. They always indicate in what circumstances you are born. My father called me Hakiza because he was a minister, and when I was born, my mother, all the time of the pregnancy, had been very sick, and when I was born, Dad said, "The Lord saves." So he called me Hakiza, meaning the Lord saves. I'm happy to give this introduction because I said in Rwanda because Rwanda is my country of birth. I was born in Rwanda, March 20, 1955. That was some time before independence, because our country became independent in 1962. So at that time, my family was living in a colonial era. The Belgians, after the Second World War, were given Rwanda as a protectorate of Belgium. So at that time, our country was under Belgian administration. My father was not born Adventist. However, when the missionaries came to Rwanda in 1921, he was a young boy. And so, since he was an orphan of both mother and father, he saw that he would probably have a better life working for the missionaries. So he started working for the missionaries. I don't know how they communicated, but that was, the Lord has his ways. So he worked with missionaries, and they introduced him to Adventism, and he ended up becoming an Adventist minister. So by the time we were born, I was born child number 5 because we had 8 children in our family. And by the time I was born, he was a minister. So I grew up in an Adventist family. I went to school for the first 3 years, but Rwanda at that time had racial issues, and I was not able to continue my education in Rwanda. At the age of 9, I had to leave the country, and my father took me to a neighboring country called Uganda. That's where I started elementary 4. So I went through elementary 7, and I was living with my older brother who had gone to Uganda as a refugee. So we stayed there all our time. So I grew up in Uganda. I was born in Rwanda, but I grew up in Uganda. But still, we lived like a Rwandan family. I never lost my mother language. I still knew Kinyarwanda. Though in Uganda we had several languages. I remember about 5 of them. And so this gives me an opportunity of being able to to use about 7 languages. Initially, our mother tongue of Kinyarwanda, then the colonial language, which was French. Belgians used French. And then later on, I also used some languages from Uganda, like Luganda, Rutoro, Rukiga, so many. And so I am a multi-language person. And later on, of course, in Uganda, I had to learn English because it was a British colony. I was in Uganda for 12 years. And at the end of 1976. That was the time of Idi Amin. If you've heard about Idi Amin, he put the country of Uganda in turmoil and wars here and there. And again, I had to run away from Uganda and I went to Congo. Congo at that time was called Zaire. And in Congo, that's where I did my bachelor's education. I did a BA in English literature. It was kind of easy for me, having had a background of English from Uganda. And so doing a BA in English literature with a minor in French, it was a good tool for me to go back to Rwanda. This story is a long story because, like, between my date of birth and time I was in Congo, that's about, I went to Congo in 78, and I lived there for 5 years. So I went back to Rwanda in 1983. When I went back to Rwanda, I found my father still a minister, and we worked together. I became, I got employed in one of our schools, church schools, and I started teaching English there. And I taught English for something like 4 years. And in our church schools, qualified teachers were few, so I taught English. At the same time, I was requested to teach other subjects like geography, economics, and other subjects like civics. So for these 4 years, I was a busy teacher in our Adventist school. And then in 1988, I was called to go to the translation department at the headquarters of our union, which is in the capital city of Kigali. So I translated materials from, general conference materials, they all come in English. Like the Sabbath school, coteries, and all other instructions, they all come in English. So we had to translate it into the local language, Kinyarwanda. That was my job for something like 5 years again. And by 1994, the time genocide started in Rwanda, I was working with translation. And during the war, of course, church was not operational, nothing was working, so we kind of stopped working until about 4 months later. When I came back, I did a little bit of translation, and I was appointed to lead the literature ministry department, which is part of the publishing department. You wanted me to give some details of my childhood. In Rwanda at that time, it was really very much undeveloped. So all the places my father had to go as a church pastor, because at that time he was pastoring like 30, a lot of churches, he would always walk to where he was going. There were some roads, but very few vehicles, very few cars. And so many times I would walk with him to these different churches where he would be going to minister to people. And I would listen to his sermons. I would see everything that he was doing. Until, of course, I left the country. So when I left the country, when I went to Uganda, this was more or less for elementary education and secondary education, and there wasn't much of church involvement. Of course, we would go to church like other people, and I was baptized in 1971. I was baptized in 1971, and that was in Uganda. And church in Africa, whether it be in Rwanda or Uganda, it is similar. There are masses of people going to church, so that you would find a lot of people coming to church. Of course, in Rwanda it was evident because Adventism, Seventh-day Adventist Church was second largest in population compared to Catholicism. Yeah. And so we had a lot of membership. By then, I remember when I went back to work, we had like about 600,000 people. Of course, some were registered Seventh-day Adventists, though they probably did not attend regularly, but that was more or less the statistics of 600,000, 500,000. So we had a big membership there. I left my home at an age of 9, and my older siblings, like my elder brother and 2 of my elder brothers, had gone out of the country. I was more or less with my sisters, and being a minister's family, the village always looked to us for good conduct, and they wanted to be friends with the minister's kids, and our parents also always did their best to have morning worship, noon and evening, and all the church meetings. So much of our time was in church, really, church activities with that. I remember one time my father asked me to go with him to visit a sick member. This was a woman. And then my father, knowing that she was sick, did not enter through the front door because he knew that probably she would be in bed. So he went back behind, and we found that lady who was sick in the backyard, smoking her pipe. And then when she saw my father, she said, "Oh, Pastor, I'm very sorry. I didn't expect you at this time." And so experiences like that with church members, we always, they are good experiences in life. You came to realize that being a church member is one thing, and being faithful to what we learn is another thing. But at home we are more or less minister's family. I knew all the church hymnals by heart, and a lot of Bible texts and by heart, because this was our life. This was our life, and I really appreciate that, because even today, part of my life is led by that. Yeah, being a pastor's kid is challenging, because on one hand, a kid wants to be a kid. You really do not love to be restricted by this and this and this. You just do what you like, what you feel pleases you. On the other hand, we knew that church members were looking at us as ministers' kids, and so our conduct had to be exemplary. So I would say that at one point we would feel rather stressed by the fact that we are not free in this way, and on the other hand we would feel okay because we are respected in the village, in the community. And so, but on the whole, it was a blessed experience. My father grew around missionaries, and so they taught him how to cook clean food, how to use clean water, how to be clean in the house. And so at home, we would drink boiled water, would eat plant food like beans, vegetables, potatoes, and we never used meat at home. We also were supposed to go to bed early. As soon as the sun set, we would go to bed. But that was not the practice in other families outside. Other families outside, they would sit around fire and talk and drink beer and spend a lot of evening time and go to bed very late. So I grew up in good habits of eating, of resting, and so my health was really good. And that's why when I told you that I was born in 1955, you are surprised, because I never tasted beer, I never tasted any alcoholic beverage, I never smoked in life, I never ate food like meat or what when I was at home. Of course, later on, I would taste it here and there, but that was not my habit. So I found myself really healthy, and whenever I would compare myself with my colleagues at school, they would look much older, and it's just because of the lifestyle we had at home, which is excellent. That's another positive part of being an Adventist. We attended a public school in the Congo, and so all kinds of characters were there. We had, of course, fellow Adventists. I had a few Adventists with whom we would go to church on Sabbath, but we also studied with a lot of Catholics, a lot of Protestants, and even atheists, and many, most of those religions, denominations, they are not very strict in what they believe. So whether they are Catholics or Protestants, they do not behave as if they are Christians. So we grew up in a world where we had to make choices. We had to make our choices. And in many cases, our friends would always wonder where we went on Saturday. Where were you yesterday? And then we would tell them, yesterday was Sabbath. We went to church. And, so that's where you always go every Saturday. And they would be surprised that we always go to church. Because for them, they are Catholics, they are Protestants, but they don't go. Sunday for them is a day off from school, that's all. But nothing like practicing their faith. So Congo for me was another big new experience, because this was a different country from ours, different languages, different people we met, and so far from home, we had to fly to Congo. Yeah, Congo is a very big country. But it was also mind-opening, because we were in a city, southern part of Congo, which is close to Zambia, and there I came to understand that there is a time of cold weather and the time of warm weather. In Rwanda, it is more or less the same. But down there in the south, they experience winter too. But their winter is in June instead of December here. So in June and July, we would be very cold. And they would tell us, this is our winter. I said, oh. But for Rwanda, it's more or less the same. It is on the tropics, so weather really is always the same. There's no cold, there's no hot, it's always the same. So that is another experience which I got. And being in Rwanda, I never knew that a man would put oil on his body. Because we had, I don't know, because of the warm weather, our skin is never got dry. But when I came to southern Congo, during winter I experienced skin break, and they told me, you need to put some oil on your hands and your skin, and so many other experiences. The country of Rwanda is very beautiful. It's beautiful in a way that it is always green. It never gets dry or wet. It rains and then ceases to rain, and then we have sunshine. And because it's not flat, it is hills. It's a hilly country. They call it a country of 1,000 hills. It's hilly valleys, and after, for example, when it rains, after the rain, and you look across the hills, it's so beautiful. Rwanda is a small country of about, it's 21 square thousand kilometers, which I need to calculate in miles, but it's a small country. It's in Central East Africa. In the north we have Uganda. In the west we have Congo, which was formerly Zaire. In the south we have Burundi. And in the west, east is Tanzania. west is Congo, east is Tanzania, south is Burundi. It's reason why I say Rwanda is very beautiful is because weather-wise, it's more or less 70, 72, rains and sunshine, evergreen. And because of that weather, we always have fresh food. So we've got, on a daily basis, fresh food. We have like beans, as I said, we have potatoes, we have sweet potatoes and Irish potatoes, we have pineapples as fruits, we have bananas, we have a lot of oranges, a lot of tomatoes, all kinds of tropical food is found in Rwanda. Of course, we also have beautiful game reserves. If you are interested in watching animals in the open, not in the zoo, we have beautiful game reserves. And one particular animal we have, which is only found in Rwanda, is called mountain gorilla. So if ever you want to see a mountain gorilla, it is only in Rwanda.